The laboratory existed in the language of separation. 3-meter clearance zones marked in phosphorescent tape, airflow indicators tracking particulate dispersal, decontamination chambers nested between every functional space. Kira Ashwin moved through it with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to make precision a substitute for warmth. She arrived at 0600, same as always. The building's environmental systems recognized her biometric signature and adjusted the temperature in her workspace to exactly 19.2 degrees Celsius. Not comfortable, optimal for extended cognitive function. She'd programmed it herself 7 years ago and never thought to change it. Coffee from the single-serve dispenser, consumed while standing at her primary workstation, the ceramic warm against her palms for exactly the duration it took to cool below drinkability. The city beyond the reinforced windows looked like a watercolor left in rain. New Seattle's atmospheric processors maintained constant mild precipitation, the Varethi's preferred method of distributing their modulators. Everything appeared softened, muted, gentle. People moved through the streets with unhurried grace, their interactions carefully distanced. Kira barely noticed anymore. She pulled up the latest genome sequencing from Subject 7, one of the 12 documented immunity cases. The patterns were there, had always been there. A specific cluster of regulatory genes that remained active in the immune cases. Kira had mapped them, modeled them, built predictive frameworks for artificial activation. Revolutionary science conducted in perfect isolation. Her fingers moved across the haptic interface, pulling up protein folding simulations. The work consumed her attention the way it always did, reducing the world to datasets and correlations. She didn't hear Dr. Yuki Tanaka enter, didn't register her presence until the woman cleared her throat from exactly 3 meters away. "They're bringing you a live subject," Yuki said. No preamble. Kira's hands stilled. "What?" "Varethi medical transport. Arriving at 1400. Full immunity case. Male. Late 20s. They found him in one of the mountain communities. The mountain communities. Places where humans had fled during the early years of Varethi influence, seeking elevation above the heaviest atmospheric modulator concentrations. They're bringing him here?" Kira kept her voice level. "Why not their own facilities?" Yuki's expression carried something Kira couldn't quite pass. "They specifically requested you, said your immunity research made you the logical specialist." She paused. "His blood work shows active resistance to atmospheric modulators. He's not compliant. He's what humans used to be." The implications settled over Kira like cold water. An unmodulated human, immune to contact rejection. Everything her research had been theoretically pursuing, walking into her lab in flesh and blood. At 1400 exactly, the Varethi arrived. Chapter 2. The Variable. They brought him in restraints. Marcus Chen, according to the transfer documents. 27 years old. Full immunity to human contact rejection, confirmed through field testing. Kira watched from the observation room as they processed him through decontamination, lean build, economical movement even in restraints, dark hair longer than the current moderate style. His skin showed faint scarring along his forearms, old injuries well healed, but it was his eyes that held her attention. Dark, tracking everything with an alertness that felt almost predatory compared to the soft, focused gaze of modulator-affected humans. The senior Varethi monitor approached the observation window. "Dr. Ashwin, we appreciate your accommodation of this urgent assessment. The documentation mentions field confirmation of immunity. What protocols were used?" "Direct contact testing with 3 separate human subjects over extended periods. No rejection response observed." The Varethi's tones carried concern. More troubling is his resistance to atmospheric influence. He exhibits pre-contact human neurology, elevated aggression markers, capacity for violence. Has he demonstrated violence? He has demonstrated capacity. The distinction concerns us. What exactly do you need from this assessment? Determine if his immunity is transmissible. Evaluate mechanisms of modulator resistance. Provide recommendation on whether the anomaly represents containable variation or systemic threat. Translation. Figure out if he could spread immunity to others and decide if the Varethi should eliminate him. After they left, Kira stood alone in the observation room. Marcus had been moved to the primary examination suite, standing at the center of the sterile white space. He turned slowly, scanning the room. When his eyes found the observation window, he smiled. Small, controlled, directed precisely at where she stood hidden. He knew she was watching. Tomorrow she would begin testing, would map his immunity, trace its mechanisms, determine if it could be replicated. The prospect should have excited her purely as research opportunity. Instead, she felt something closer to vertigo. Chapter 3. First Contact. The examination suite smelled like ozone and industrial cleaner. Kira had spent the night reviewing every immunity study in her private archives. She entered at 800, maintaining the prescribed 3-meter distance. Marcus sat on the examination platform, dressed in standard facility wear. His attention found her immediately. Dr. Ashwin. His voice carried textures she'd almost forgotten existed in human speech: roughness, direct challenge. Mr. Chen. She placed her tablet on the counter. I need to establish baseline measurements before we proceed to contact scenarios. But it will be close, within safe parameters. He leaned back slightly. Safe for who? The question landed differently than she expected. Not threatening, genuinely curious. The protocols exist for mutual protection, she said. From what? I can't hurt you by touching you. You can't hurt me, so who are we protecting? Kira felt something shift in her chest. The protocols aren't just about physical harm. I know, he held her gaze. They're about control, about keeping humans afraid of each other. She should have reported the comment. Instead, she found herself moving closer. You think the Varithi engineered contact rejection deliberately? I think they engineered everything deliberately. He paused. What do you think? No one had asked her that question in 7 years. I think immunity research might answer that question. His expression shifted, something almost like approval crossing his features. That's why they're afraid of you. They're not. They are. He stood, moving toward her with deliberate slowness, stopping exactly at the 3-meter boundary. You've been studying immunity for 7 years. They think you're trying to understand an anomaly. But you're actually trying to restore something they took away. The accuracy made her breath catch. If I were, she said quietly, that would be dangerous information to share. More dangerous than what we're about to do? What are we about to do? Test whether immunity can spread. He extended his hand across the boundary line, palm up. Isn't that the real question? Kira's training screamed warnings, but her hand lifted anyway. She stopped centimeters from his palm, close enough to feel warmth radiating from his skin. This isn't proper methodology, she whispered. No, he agreed. It's trust. Her fingertips touched his palm. No pain came, no inflammatory cascade, just the shocking reality of skin against skin, the specific heat of another person's body, the way her nervous system lit up with recognition after years of trained suppression. Marcus's fingers closed gently around hers. The contact point generated awareness that spread up her arm, settled somewhere behind her sternum as an ache she'd forgotten how to name. Your pulse is elevated, he said quietly, his thumb resting against the inside of her wrist. Autonomous response to novel stimulus. Is that what this is? His other hand rose slowly. When she didn't pull away, his palm settled against the side of her face, warm and solid. Kira's eyes closed involuntarily. The sensation was overwhelming, not painful but intense in ways that had nothing to do with biology. We need to document this, she managed. This is exactly what it needs to be. His voice had dropped lower. The first time in 7 years, someone's touched you without hurting you. The monitoring system's alert shattered the moment, Varithi presence approaching. Marcus stepped back immediately. Kira grabbed her tablet with shaking hands. Designate Thelvar entered. Dr. Ashwin. We detected extended proximity alert. Is there difficulty? No difficulty. Initial contact assessment, confirming immunity parameters. You engaged in direct contact without full monitoring protocols? Preliminary contact only, necessary to establish baseline. The lies came easier than they should have. No rejection cascade observed. After Thelvar left, silence filled the suite. They know, Marcus said quietly. They suspect. What happens when suspicion becomes certainty? Kira looked at the tablet in her hands, the professional boundaries she'd destroyed in less than 5 minutes. Then we find out if immunity is worth losing everything for. His smile was small and sad and somehow certain. "You already know the answer to that." She did. Chapter 4. Proximity Studies. The next 3 weeks established a rhythm. Official protocols demanded monitored contact sessions, twice daily, 30 minutes each, comprehensive bioscanning throughout. The data was extraordinary. Marcus's immune system didn't just tolerate her proximity, it actively facilitated it. Within 3 days, her contact rejection markers had dropped 40%. Within a week, her body was adapting to recognize his presence as homeostatic. But the official sessions were only part of the story. The first night she'd told herself it was professional necessity. Extended observation. The justifications dissolved the moment he opened the door, and she saw the careful surprise in his expression. His apartment was Spartan, but he'd made small adjustments. A chair positioned to face the window. His few personal belongings arranged with care on the single shelf. A knife with a carved wooden handle, a smooth river stone, a photograph so worn the faces were barely visible. "Hey, you came back," he said. "I need to monitor long-term immune adaptation." Marcus's smile suggested he heard what she wasn't saying. "Of course, science." A book lay open on the table. Actual paper. Pre-contact human behavior studies. "Reading about what we used to be?" she asked, trying to understand what they turned us into. He sat. The mountain communities kept some of the old books. She pulled out the other chair, sat down across from him, close enough to feel the subtle heat of his presence. "Tell me about the mountain communities," she said. So he did. Chapter 5. Unmodulated. The stories came in pieces over nights that stretched longer than Kira intended. Marcus described communities that existed above the heaviest atmospheric modulator concentration, places where people touched without planning, argued without gentle mediation, felt things at full intensity. "It wasn't perfect," he said during their 5th night, both sitting on the floor with their backs against the wall, shoulders almost touching. People fought, made mistakes, but they also held each other, built families that shared physical space. The Varethi would say that's dangerous, and they'd be partially right. We're capable of violence, but we're also capable of this. His hand found hers in the small space between them. They'd crossed that boundary gradually, professional contact giving way to something that felt less like research and more like necessity. The contact generated warmth that spread up her arm. Not sexual exactly, though there was physical awareness. More like the bone-deep comfort of being near someone whose presence her body trusted. "How did you end up in the communities?" she asked. "I was born there. My mother was part of the original group." His thumb traced small circles against her palm. "She died 2 years ago. Pneumonia. I came down the mountain looking for medicine. That's how the Varethi found me. You came here trying to save someone. I failed, but I learned something about the modulated cities, how complete the control is." He turned his head, close enough that she could see the exact color of his irises. "Until I met you. You're the first modulated human I've encountered who still wants something different." "I don't know what I want anymore." "Yes, you do. You want what I'm feeling right now. Connection. Real contact." His free hand rose slowly. When she didn't pull away, his palm settled against her cheek. Kira's breath caught. The touch was gentle, questioning, loaded with 7 years of isolation. "This isn't research," she whispered. "No," he agreed. "It hasn't been for a while." When he leaned forward, when his mouth brushed against hers, soft, careful, Kira felt something crack open in her chest. She kissed him back with 7 years of accumulated hunger, her free hand finding his shoulder, his neck, tangling in his hair. They broke apart only when breathing became necessary. "The Varethi monitor the quarters," she managed. "I know. They'll see. Let them see." His hands framed her face. "Let them understand that connection is stronger than their atmospheric control." She kissed him again, deeper, her body remembering things her mind had tried to forget. When she finally left at Uro 300, she understood that the research had become irrelevant. The question was whether she could survive going back to isolation after remembering what connection felt like. Chapter 6. Acceleration. The change in Kira's routine was subtle, but the Varethi noticed. Designate Thelvar began attending the monitoring sessions personally. They watched the way Marcus and Kira interacted with invasive attention. Your immune adaptation is proceeding faster than projected, Thelvar observed during the 4th week. Kira kept her expression neutral. The subject's immunity appears highly transmissible, and yet the mechanism remains unclear. I'm still mapping the pathways. Indeed. Thelvar moved closer. We are concerned about secondary effects. Your behavioral patterns have shifted, sleep schedule disruption, increased time spent in the research wing outside official hours. The Varethi's tones carried unidentifiable harmonics. You display markers consistent with pre-contact human attachment formation. The clinical description landed like cold water. Attachment requires proximity, she said carefully. Extended contact is necessary for proper immunity assessment. We must consider whether the immunity transmission includes neurological components, whether his resistance to atmospheric modulators might be transferring as well. If Marcus could transfer not just contact immunity, but resistance to emotional dampening, he became exponentially more dangerous. I've seen no evidence of modulator resistance, Kira lied. But she had. Emotions that felt sharper, anger that sparked hot, desire that surged undampened. She was becoming unmodulated. We will need to accelerate the assessment timeline, Thelvar said. If the subject's immunity cannot be extracted and controlled, he will be neutralized. That night, she went to his quarters earlier than usual. Marcus was waiting. They're going to take you, she said, move you where I won't have access. Are they wrong? Am I making you resistant to atmospheric control? No, they're not wrong. So what do we do? I have an idea, but it's dangerous. Tell me. I can replicate your immunity, not through controlled extraction, but through direct transmission. If I could synthesize a therapy based on your immune markers, combine it with sustained contact exposure, I could spread immunity deliberately. That's not research, that's resistance. I know. Marcus was quiet, his thumbs tracing patterns against her palms. The Varethi will consider it biological warfare, so we don't get caught. He pulled her closer. You understand there's no going back. Once we start, you become what they've been afraid of, a human choosing connection over compliance. I chose that the night I first touched you. His kiss was different this time, not gentle exploration, but certainty. They moved toward his bed. Clothes came away in stages, hands mapping skin with the hunger of long denial. When Kira felt his weight settle over her, she understood viscerally what the Varethi had taken from humanity. This connection, this vulnerability, this willingness to let someone close enough to destroy you, trusting they'd hold you carefully. Marcus's mouth traced her collarbone, the hollow of her throat. Her hands explored the topography of his back. We're really doing this, she whispered. The resistance or this? His hand slid along her ribs. Both. They came together slowly, carefully, with the attention of two people reclaiming something precious. Each point of contact felt like revolution. Afterward, lying tangled together, both trembling with endorphins and exhaustion, Kira felt something shift in her fundamental understanding. She wasn't a compliant researcher anymore. She was human, unmodulated, connected, and she was about to start a revolution. Chapter 7. Synthesis. The next 2 weeks existed in careful deception. During official hours, Kira maintained perfect professional distance, filed reports that documented gradual immunity transmission without revealing the extent of her adaptation or the synthesis work she conducted after hours. The Varethi watched, but they saw what they expected, a dedicated researcher pursuing controlled understanding. They didn't see the late nights in her apartment lab, the careful extraction and analysis of her own adapted immune cells, the synthesis of a treatment protocol combining Marcus's immunity markers with targeted cellular reprogramming. They didn't see Marcus slipping into her quarters at 0200, the two of them working together to refine the synthesis. We need to test it, Marcus said during their 10th night, both exhausted sitting on her lab floor with sample readouts scattered around them. Kira looked at the synthesized immunity therapy, a simple injection that would trigger the same adaptive response in other humans that contact with Marcus had generated in her. Testing means exposing someone else, bringing them into this. You have someone in mind. She did, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. It's a risk. If she refuses, if she reports us, then we're finished before we start. The conversation happened 2 days later, after evening shift, after monitoring systems cycled to minimal attention. Yuki entered Kira's office, eyes tracking the locked door, the privacy screens. "This feels like a conversation we shouldn't be having," Yuki said. "Do you ever think about how different we are from what humans used to be?" Yuki was quiet. "Every day. I remember my grandmother, before the full adaptation. She used to hold my hand when we walked, actually touch me for no reason except connection." Kira's chest tightened. "What if I told you we could have that again?" She pulled out the synthesized therapy. "Marcus Chen's immunity is transmissible. I've adapted completely, and I've created a treatment that can replicate the process in others." Yuki stared at the vial. "The Varithi would consider that biological terrorism." "Yes. And you're asking me to be the first test subject?" "I'm asking if you want to remember what it feels like to be fully human." Silence stretched. Then Yuki reached across the desk, picked up the vial. "How long until we know if it works?" 48 hours for initial adaptation. "And if it fails?" "Then you'll develop standard contact rejection, possibly more severe." Yuki nodded slowly. "My grandmother used to say we used to laugh until we couldn't breathe. Used to love people so intensely it was almost painful." She held out her arm. "Do it." Kira administered the injection with trembling hands. For 48 hours, she monitored Yuki's biosigns remotely. Marcus stayed close, both understanding that if the treatment failed, they'd need to run. But it didn't fail. 72 hours after injection, Yuki walked into Kira's lab and pulled her into a hug. Direct, sustained, skin-to-skin contact that generated no rejection response. Just the simple warmth of human connection. "It works," Yuki whispered. "Oh God, it actually works." When they separated, both had tears tracking down their faces. "We need to move carefully," Kira said. "The Varithi are watching. If we spread this too fast, they'll shut us down," Marcus finished. "We need to build the network in absolute secrecy." Yuki nodded. "I know others. Researchers, medical staff, people who remember something different." She paused. "But we need to understand, the moment the Varithi discover this, it becomes war." Kira looked between them. "Then we make sure they can't eliminate it. We spread immunity far enough, fast enough, that containment becomes impossible." Marcus's hand found hers. "Revolution through biology." It was Yuki who asked, "And what happens to us when they figure it out?" None of them had an answer, but standing there together, three humans whose bodies had remembered how to tolerate proximity, they understood that some things were worth the risk. Connection, touch, the dangerous possibility of loving someone enough to hurt when you lost them. All the things they were about to fight to restore. Chapter 8. The Network. Over the next month, the network grew in careful increments. 12 people, then 20, then 35, each one selected by Yuki's assessment, each willing to accept the risk. Kira administered the treatments personally, monitoring each adaptation. Success rate, 93% full immunity within 7 days. Marcus became the coordinator, his mountain community experience proving invaluable. He taught them communication protocols that avoided Varithi monitoring, established supply chains, created contingency plans, and at night he came to Kira's quarters, and they existed in the small pocket of intimacy they'd carved from the expanding resistance. "We can't sustain this pace," Kira said one night, lying against his chest, fingers tracing idle patterns across his ribs. "I know. The more people we bring in, the higher the probability someone makes a mistake. Do you regret it? Starting this?" His chest rose with deep breath. "I regret that it's necessary, but I don't regret you. Don't regret this." His arms tightened around her. "They're going to separate us when they figure it out. Or maybe we succeed. Maybe immunity spreads far enough that they can't contain it. Maybe we win." She wanted to believe him. "Winning might not look like what we imagine," she said quietly. "Then we redefine victory." His thumb brushed across her lower lip. "Every person who adapts immunity is a small revolution. That matters." Kira kissed him, trying to encode everything she felt and couldn't articulate. They were still tangled together when her comm unit chimed. Emergency alert. Kira grabbed the device. Varithi audit announced. Full research facility review. 3 days. Marcus read over her shoulder, his body tensing. "They know something's wrong. Could be routine." "Nothing's routine right now. They're going to review all research protocols, access logs, supply usage. Kira's mind raced. A comprehensive audit would reveal irregularities. We need to move the synthesis equipment, scrub the data. And the 35 people we've already treated? Each person's biosigns showed distinctive markers of adapted immunity. If the Varithi conducted comprehensive medical scanning, those markers would be visible. We have to warn them, tell them to avoid situations requiring medical evaluation. They worked through the night, dismantling evidence, moving equipment, scrubbing data trails. By dawn, the lab looked appropriately sterile, but Kira's access logs remained. The extended hours, the irregular patterns. They're going to question you, Marcus said. I'll tell them the truth, that I've been obsessed with immunity research, that finding you represented the breakthrough I'd been pursuing. All truth is incomplete. They stood together as pale light filtered through the windows, understanding that the next 72 hours would determine everything. Whatever happens, Marcus said quietly, you gave 35 people the ability to touch each other without fear. That doesn't disappear even if we do. Kira held him tighter, trying to memorize the specific warmth of his body. She'd spent 7 years believing immunity was an intellectual problem. But standing there, she understood immunity was never about biology. It was about choosing connection over safety, about being human in all the messy, uncontrolled ways the Varithi had tried to engineer away. Chapter 9. The Audit. The Varithi arrived exactly on schedule. Designate Thelvar led, accompanied by 2 specialists. They spent the first day reviewing official documentation. Kira sat through the examination with practiced calm, answering questions with technical precision. The behavioral assessor watched her with particular intensity, looking for physiological markers of stress or deception. Kira kept her breathing steady, maintained appropriate eye contact, but inside, her unmodulated nervous system spiked with adrenaline. The second day they examined her private lab. They found nothing definitively incriminating, but the behavioral assessor's chromatic patterns suggested suspicion. Your equipment usage patterns are unusual, they observed. Extensive late-night activity, experimental protocols that didn't yield useful results, and the time spent in Subject Chen's quarters. Extended behavioral observation. His unmodulated neurology provides valuable comparative data. Your biosigns indicate elevated attachment formation with Subject Chen. Kira's pulse jumped. The Varithi had been monitoring her neurological changes, the patterns indicating she was forming human bonds. Before she could respond, an alert chimed. Emergency medical situation. The Varithi moved as a unit toward the examination wing. Kira followed, finding Yuki already there, her face pale. He collapsed, Yuki said, gesturing to where Marcus lay on the floor, breathing shallow. Sudden onset. The Varethi's medical specialist moved immediately to his side. Kira knelt on his other side, close enough to see the tension in his jaw. He wasn't unconscious. This was performance. Elevated histamine response, the specialist reported. Systemic inflammatory cascade. Symptoms consistent with rejection reaction. But that was impossible. Marcus's immunity was absolute. Then she saw it, his hand forming a shape from their communication protocols, the signal for dispersion. He was creating a distraction, buying them time. We need to move him to medical isolation, Thelvar said. As they prepared transport, Marcus's hand found Kira's wrist. The apartment, he whispered. Check the apartment. After the Varithi departed with Marcus, Kira and Yuki slipped into his quarters through maintenance corridors. Kira searched systematically until her hand found it behind the loose panel near his bed. A data drive. She pocketed it without examining the contents. Back in her lab, she connected the drive to her secure terminal. Complete documentation of the immunity network. Names, treatment dates, biomarkers, but also evidence of Varithi atmospheric modulation, medical records spanning 3 generations showing the systematic rewiring of human neurology. Documentation contradicting every official narrative, proof that the Varithi hadn't saved humans, they'd domesticated them. He's giving us a choice, Kira said. We can use this evidence to expose what the Varithi have done. Make it public. Which also exposes the immunity network, Yuki finished. Makes us vulnerable. Kira nodded. Stay hidden and maintain safety. but allow the audit to continue, or go public, force the confrontation, and accept the consequences. What do we do? Kira looked at the evidence, thought about Marcus in isolation, about the 35 people who trusted her, about 7 years of careful research, and she thought about the way Marcus's hand felt in hers. We expose it. All of it. That's not resistance. That's revolution. I know. They sat together, understanding that the choice would reshape everything. Somewhere in Varithi medical isolation, Marcus was buying them time. The question was whether they could use it to change everything before the Varithi shut them down. Chapter 10. Exposure. The data release happened at 0300, coordinated across 12 network access points. Kira had spent hours preparing the documentation, evidence packaged in an accessible format. The core message was simple. The Varithi had systematically engineered human isolation. Contact rejection wasn't evolutionary necessity. It was deliberate control. And immunity existed. Could be restored. By 0600, the information had spread across every major human communication network. By 0800, Varithi suppression attempts had only amplified its reach. Kira watched the cascade from her lab, tracking the spread. Thousands of people accessing the information, reading the evidence, beginning to question. The Varithi response came at 0900. Designate Thelvar arrived with a security escort. Dr. Ashwin, you are detained for investigation of biological terrorism and seditious distribution of destabilizing information. Kira stood slowly. I released factual documentation. That's not terrorism. It's transparency. You have deliberately undermined 3 generations of carefully calibrated human development. You have spread immunity treatments without authorization. You have endangered the stability we have worked to establish. You created a prison and called it safety. Humans are not capable of making informed choices about their own neurology. And yet here I am, making exactly that choice, as are 35 others, as are thousands reading the evidence right now. Thelvar moved closer. Where is Subject Chen? I don't know. Medical isolation, I assume. Subject Chen is not in medical isolation. He disappeared approximately 30 minutes after transport. Marcus had escaped. Then I definitely don't know where he is. You will be detained until his location is determined. Before the security escort could restrain her, the lab's communication system activated with override priority. Marcus's face appeared on every screen. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm addressing everyone who can hear this. I grew up in the mountain communities where humans still lived without atmospheric modulation, where people touched each other without fear. He paused. The Varithi will tell you that we were dangerous, but I've lived both ways, and what they call safety is actually imprisonment. The transmission showed Marcus in an unknown location. Dr. Kira Ashwin has developed a treatment that restores immunity to human contact. 35 people have already accepted this treatment. The Varithi will call this terrorism, but terrorism is forcing an entire species to live in isolation for 3 generations. What we're offering is freedom. Thelvar attempted to shut down the transmission, but Marcus had routed it through too many redundant systems. The treatment protocol is being released publicly. Any facility with basic medical equipment can synthesize it. The choice is yours. Stay isolated and compliant, or risk everything for the possibility of connection. The transmission cut to documentation, treatment protocols, synthesis instructions. They'll try to stop this. They'll detain people. They'll tell you it's dangerous. His expression softened. But every person who accepts immunity becomes evidence that we're right, that humans don't need to be domesticated to be safe. The screen went dark as the Varithi blocked the transmission. But Kira could see from network indicators that it had reached thousands of locations, been captured and redistributed. Thelvar turned to her. You have destroyed 3 generations of careful work. Or liberating, Kira said quietly. The question is whether you're willing to let humans decide. As the security escort moved to detain her, as her lab was dismantled around her, Kira felt something unexpected. Relief. The secret was out. The choice was public. Marcus had given them that. The revolution had truly begun. Chapter 11. Containment. Varithi detention was sterile, A small room with ambient temperature control. They provided nutritionally optimized meals, monitored her biosigns continuously, everything calibrated for minimal discomfort and maximum isolation. She'd been there for 36 hours when Yuki managed to get a message through. 14 new immunity cases confirmed. Treatment is spreading. Network is dispersing. Stay strong. Kira read it 3 times before allowing it to delete, feeling pride mixed with anxiety. It was working. Despite suppression, people were choosing immunity. The door opened on hour 48, admitting designate Thelvar alone. They studied her before speaking. "We underestimated you." "Most people do." That was not a compliment. Thelvar's patterns shifted. "We came to your world with the intention of preventing self-destruction. Human aggression was escalating toward global conflict. The trajectory was clear. So you decided domestication was the answer. We decided intervention was necessary. The contact rejection was an unfortunate side effect." Kira sat forward. "You're lying." The bluntness made Thelvar ripple with surprise. "Explain." "Contact rejection isn't a side effect. It's too precisely calibrated, too specifically designed to prevent exactly the kind of human bonding that would allow organized resistance." The silence stretched. "We believed isolation was necessary for stability," Thelvar said finally. "That human capacity for violence required restriction of intimate connection. The two are linked. So you took away our ability to hurt each other by taking away our ability to hold each other. You eliminated violence by eliminating intimacy. And now you have undone 3 generations of that work. Do you understand the chaos you may have created? Do you understand the prison you created?" Kira countered. "People living their entire lives without a single touch. The complete erosion of family structures, intimate relationships, physical comfort. What would you have had us do? I would have had you trust that we might choose something better. Give us tools to manage our own aggression without stripping away our capacity for connection. And if your immunity treatments lead to violence, then we'll deal with it. Make mistakes, learn, grow." Thelvar was quiet for a long time. When they spoke, their tones carried uncertainty. "We cannot allow widespread immunity. You can't stop it. The treatment protocol is public. You'd have to shut down all human medical infrastructure. Then we will isolate those who accept treatment." Kira shook her head. "It's already beyond containment. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands. You can't quarantine that many without destabilizing your own systems." "Then what do you suggest?" The question surprised her. "Let it happen. Allow immunity to spread. Monitor the results. If we descend into violence, then you can intervene. But if we don't, if humans prove capable of managing unmodulated emotion, then maybe you consider gradually reducing atmospheric modulation. That is unacceptable risk. Continued forced isolation is guaranteed harm." Thelvar moved toward the door. "You will remain detained while we assess. If immunity distribution leads to significant violence, you will be held responsible. And if it doesn't?" The Varethi paused. "Then perhaps we will need to reconsider our fundamental understanding of your species." After they left, Kira sat thinking about Marcus continuing the distribution, about Yuki and the growing network, about hundreds of humans touching each other for the first time. She thought about revolution measured in heartbeats and held hands, and she understood that regardless of what the Varethi decided, something fundamental had changed. Humans were remembering connection, and that memory was impossible to contain. Chapter 12. Convergence. The detention lasted 9 more days. During that time, the Varethi's increasing agitation told its own story. Their visits became more frequent, their questions more pointed. On day 11, the door opened to reveal Marcus. Kira stood so quickly she felt dizzy. "You're here," she said. "Technically under guard." He gestured to the 2 Varethi monitors. "But they've agreed to allow private communication." The door sealed. Marcus closed the distance immediately, his hands finding her shoulders, sliding up to frame her face. "You look terrible," he said, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. 11 days in isolation, living the dream." His smile was brief and pained. Then his mouth found hers, the kiss desperate and certain. When they separated, both breathing hard, Kira rested her forehead against his. "How many?" 4,300 confirmed immunity cases. Distribution is accelerating." His hands moved through her hair. We're winning. At what cost? Surprisingly minimal. Isolated incidents of violence, but lower rates than under full modulation. Turns out humans with capacity for physical comfort are less aggressive than humans starved of contact. His expression turned serious. The Varethi are facing a choice. Accept that immunity distribution is irreversible and adapt, or attempt mass suppression that would destabilize everything. What do they want from you? Negotiation. They're willing to discuss gradual reduction of atmospheric modulation in exchange for structured immunity distribution. They want you to help design the framework. Kira pulled back. They're letting me out? Conditional release. You work with Varethi specialists on safe immunity protocols. Help transition humanity from forced isolation to managed autonomy. His hands tightened. It's not perfect, not complete liberation, but it's movement. And if I refuse, they'll continue attempting containment, probably fail. We'll all end up in a messier situation. Kira thought about the 4,000 people who'd accepted immunity. What do you think I should do? Marcus smiled. I think you should stop asking me to make your decisions. You started this revolution. You get to decide how it continues. She wanted to argue, but he was right. I'll work with them, design the protocols, but I want complete transparency. Everything gets published publicly. They won't like that. I don't care. If we're transitioning to autonomy, it happens in the open. Marcus kissed her again, proud and fierce. There's the revolutionary I fell in love with. The words landed in her chest like stones dropping into water. You love me, she said. Though of course I love you. You're brilliant and stubborn, and you decided immunity research was more important than safety. You're exactly the kind of person worth loving. Kira felt tears build. I love you too, even though you're reckless and idealistic, and you convinced me to start a revolution based on letting people hold hands. Best revolution ever, he said, pulling her close. They stood together in the sterile cell, holding each other, both understanding this moment was temporary. Soon there would be negotiations, protocols, the complicated work of transforming chaos into sustainable change. But for now, there was just this. Two humans choosing connection, touch, the dangerous possibility of loving someone enough to hurt. The monitors chimed a warning, time running short. I have to go, Marcus said, not moving. I know. They want to start protocol development tomorrow. Marcus. Yeah. Thank you for being reckless enough to let me touch you. For being exactly yourself when I needed to remember what human means. His smile was sunlight. Back at you, revolutionary. When he left, when she was alone again, Kira felt the absence like cold water, but also hope. 4,000 people, growing exponentially. The revolution continued. Chapter 13. Contact Protocol. The negotiation took 6 weeks of careful framework development, compromise, and moments when Kira wanted to walk away. But slowly, they built something workable. The Varethi agreed to gradual atmospheric modulator reduction, public immunity distribution protocols with medical oversight but no forced participation, transparency in all management systems. In exchange, humanity accepted structured transition, safety protocols, monitoring systems, commitment to work with Varethi management rather than complete immediate independence. It wasn't revolution in the pure sense, it was negotiated evolution, but it was real change. 3 months after release, Kira stood in her old lab, no longer secret but an official immunity research and treatment facility. Yuki worked beside her, training new specialists. Marcus coordinated with the mountain communities. The first generation of immunity-adapted children were being born, raised with touch integrated into their earliest experiences. It would take decades to fully transition humanity, generations maybe, but the direction was clear. Humans were reclaiming connection. Kira finished reviewing the day's statistics, 800 new treatments, all proceeding without complications, and turned to find Marcus in the doorway. Ready to go home? He asked. Home. They'd moved in together 2 months ago. Give me 10 minutes, she said. But Marcus had already crossed the lab, pulling her away from the workstation, arms circling her waist. You've been here 14 hours, he murmured against her neck. The revolution can pause while you sleep. I'm training new specialists. There will always be more work, but you're no good to anyone exhausted. He pulled back. Come home. Let me feed you something real. Let us actually exist together. She wanted to argue, but she was tired, and he was here. Okay, home. They walked through the city together, hand in hand, past couples and families who no longer kept careful distances. The transition was visible everywhere, in the way people moved closer, in children who played contact games. Not everyone had accepted immunity. Some still chose isolation. The protocols respected that choice. But the trend was clear. Their apartment was small but warm. Marcus had cooked. They ate together while rain pattered against windows. The mountain communities want to establish formal exchange programs, Marcus said. Bring city children up to experience unmodulated atmosphere. The Varethi will hate that, probably, but they've agreed to gradual modulator reduction. Kira considered implications, then deliberately set them aside. That's a tomorrow problem. Marcus smiled. Look at you, learning work-life balance. After dinner, they moved to the couch, Kira tucked against Marcus's side, both comfortable in shared silence. This was still her favorite part. Not intensity of intimacy or profound conversations, but these quiet moments of simple proximity. The recognition that she didn't have to be alone anymore. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked quietly. Starting this whole thing? Kira thought about 7 years of isolation, the careful distance, the life built from things and tasks. Thought about the moment his fingertips first touched her palm. Not for a second, she said. His arm tightened. Good. Because I'm fairly invested in this version of reality. She turned her face into his shoulder, breathing in the familiar cedar and salt scent. Best revolution ever. That's what I keep saying. They sat together as evening deepened. Two humans who'd chosen connection over safety, who'd risked everything for the possibility of touch, who'd convinced thousands to make the same dangerous essential choice. The revolution was far from over. There would be setbacks, complications. But sitting there with Marcus's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Kira understood they'd already won the part that mattered. They'd remembered what it meant to be human, what it felt like to belong, and that memory was impossible to erase. Chapter 14. Belonging. 6 months after the protocols were established, Kira stood at the window of the expanded Immunity Research Center, watching snow fall over New Seattle. The atmospheric processes had been adjusted. Less aggressive precipitation, allowing natural weather patterns to emerge for the first time in 3 generations. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. Thinking deep thoughts, he asked, just watching the snow. Liar, she smiled, thinking about how different everything is now. The statistics were remarkable. 12,000 confirmed immunity cases. Modulator levels reduced by 30% in the younger populations. Violence rates stable, actually lower than under full atmospheric control, validating everything they'd argued for. The Varethi had been forced to acknowledge what humanity had proven. Connection didn't make humans more dangerous. Isolation did. Yuki says the next cohort of specialists graduates in 2 weeks, Marcus said. 23 new immunity researchers. All trained in your protocols. Our protocols, Kira corrected. You're the one who synthesized the treatment. You're the one who had the immunity to synthesize from. He turned her in his arms. Are we really going to argue about who gets credit for the revolution? Probably. His laugh was warm against her temple. I love you. I love you too. The words still felt novel despite months of use. The freedom to say them, to mean them, to build a life around them. Behind them, the research center hummed with activity. Specialists conducting treatments, monitoring adaptation, training new practitioners, the careful, methodical work of transforming revolution into sustainable change. I have something for you, Marcus said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small carved wooden box, the craftsmanship clearly mountain community work. Kira took it carefully, ran her fingers over the smooth surface. What is this? Open it. Inside, nestled in soft fabric, was a ring. Simple, elegant, made from what looked like reclaimed metal. Her breath caught. I'm not asking for legal partnership, Marcus said quietly. The Varethi still control those frameworks, but I wanted you to have something that marks what we are to each other, what you are to me. Kira looked at the ring, at Marcus, at the research center behind them, at the city transforming beyond the windows. We're already bound, she said. "Through everything we've built, everyone we've helped." "I know, but I wanted something just for us. Something that exists regardless of the revolution or the Verithi or anything external." He took the ring from the box, held it between them. "Something that says I choose you, every day, in all the ways that matter." She held out her hand, watching as he slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit. "How did you know my size?" "I paid attention." He raised her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. "I've been paying attention since the moment you first touched me, and your whole body went still, like you'd forgotten humans could feel that way." Kira pulled him close, kissed him with all the gratitude and love and bone-deep certainty she'd learned to feel, without modulation dampening the intensity. When they separated, both smiling, she looked at the ring catching light. "We should probably get back to work," she said without conviction. "Probably." Neither of them moved. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, the research center continued its work. Across the city, across the cooperation zones, across the slowly transforming world, humans were learning to touch each other again. But here, in this moment, there was just this. Two people who'd started a revolution because they refused to accept that connection had to hurt. Who'd risked everything for the simple, radical belief that humans deserved to hold each other. Who'd discovered that immunity wasn't just biological, it was choosing to be vulnerable with someone, trusting they'd hold you carefully. "I'm glad the Verithi brought you to me," Kira said quietly. "I'm glad you were reckless enough to touch me without proper protocols. Best, worst methodology ever. Absolutely terrible science. Revolutionary science." Marcus laughed, pulled her closer. "Come on, revolutionary, let's go home." They left the research center together, walking through streets where humans moved with less distance than before, where children played contact games, where the careful isolation of 3 generations was slowly, deliberately being unwound. The revolution wasn't finished, would never truly be finished. There would always be more work, more adaptation, more negotiation between what humanity wanted and what the Verithi feared. But walking hand in hand through the snow, Kira understood that the most important victory had already been won. Humans had remembered how to touch each other, had proven that connection was stronger than control, had chosen again and again to risk vulnerability for the possibility of belonging. And that choice, replicated across thousands of people, across generations yet to come, would reshape everything, not through violence or grand gestures, but through the quiet, persistent revolution of skin against skin, of hearts choosing to stay open, of humans refusing to be alone,